Welcome to Building Better Businesses, an ABA podcast. Learn firsthand from business owners who've built successful ABA businesses. Utilize proven techniques and strategies to help your practice thrive. This is Building Better Businesses, an ABA podcast with Jonathan Mueller.
My name is Jonathan Mueller, and I'm the host of Building Better Businesses in ABA. And my guest today is Hallie Respondek. And Hallie is the Chief Operating Officer of the Blossom Center for Children in San Antonio, Texas. She's worked her way up over the past 11 years from behavior therapist to BCBA to COO. And full disclosure, she is a co-host with me on the PodCASP, which is the official podcast of the Council of Autism Service Providers. Hallie, this has been a super long time in the coming. Welcome to the pod, my friend.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
I am too. So is it weird being on the other end, getting interviewed when normally you're the one that's like teeing all this up and doing the interviewing? What's that like?
I think it's weird, but it's also super exciting. Different, but exciting, mainly. Maybe a little nerve-wracking too, if I'm really honest.
This is good. It's like, hey, we're putting ourselves in the positions of like our guests, right? And knowing what they're experiencing. Well, one of the things that's really funny that I want to share. So I feel like you and I, for the past many months, have been on this quest to throw each other off on and like teeing up guests or doing intros or other things. And just a little while ago, when we were getting on the PodCASP on the platform, and I was trying to throw you and the rest of the team off with, I don't know, I was trying to make my name like My Milkshake Brings All the Boys to the Yard, which is what, like a 90s or 2000s hip hop, and a cool song. But point is, like, it didn't let my name be that long. And so I had to keep reducing it to My Milkshake Brings All the Boys. My Milkshake Brings My Milkshake. And then it just became Milkshake. So I hop on and then we go live. And the first word out of your mouth was, "What's up, Milkshake?" And Hallie, I literally froze. You know how like your mind is racing and there's just 6 million things happening in it, but you did an amazing job at throwing me off. That's impressive, man.
I'll take it because I feel like it's rare that you have nothing to say.
Yeah. Which I don't know if that's a compliment, but
It is. It is. I feel like you always say the best thing, like if you're extra quiet, I know something good is really coming, and it always does. And so to have the joy to have you just complete, and you were so funny about it too. You were like, okay, I don't even know what to say to that.
That's been really one of the super fun parts, I think, over the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, of just getting to know you and the rest of the team on the podcast. And I am excited for our conversation for so many reasons. But let's start with the Enneagram, this personality assessment thing. I first learned about the Enneagram, which is like sort of like a Myers-Briggs, but better, or like a predictive assessment or a DISC. But it's a personality assessment tool. And you helped me understand the power of it. And I know you're a big fan. You've even described the Enneagram as your quote unquote lifeline.
Mhm.
What got you so interested in the Enneagram?
Yeah, I do love it. Everybody that I've told that I'm doing this, they laugh at me because they know that it's one of my obsessions. So yeah, I love it so much. It is a lifeline for me. I think it's like a culmination of things that happened. Honestly, we in January of 2020 as an organization, we really did a ton of investment in our culture, our company health. We went down a path of a lot of company discovery and making sure we had a really clear identity, and we were aligned and our team was aligned, and it was in January of 2020, I always tell people we didn't know that the world was gonna almost be on fire in March of 2020. So hindsight's 2020. And maybe not the best time with all things combined, but I think it just kind of put us on this foot of wanting to reorganize and make sure that we knew as a company exactly who we were. And it ended up being super powerful. And within that, we started looking into the DISC, I think was one of the first things we did. We did the predictive index. We had a really great business consultant, Linda Ratner, who gave the jumping off board for me. And I had always heard about Enneagram and I just kind of dove into it. I don't know. I took a random test and I just got obsessed with it and am still obsessed with it. And I think, I don't know, I was talking to my sister earlier today and I was like, why do I love it so much? And I think I'm a seeker. Well, really, in all actuality, which we'll probably get to later, I'm a control freak. And it just let me find the answers and put reason to a lot of things. And I don't know, it just gave me a lot of answers, maybe.
Hmm. And doesn't it feel like that's in any type of change management initiative in an organization or in any process, and especially as organizations grow, right? So many ABA providers are growing so quickly and we're hiring
Mhm.
all the time. There's under constant turnover. The place to always start is to better understand ourselves, right? And especially as leaders, let's understand ourselves, our leadership, and that should translate into better understanding our teams before we embark on anything else. I don't know, is
I
that the
like
right way to think about?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we had a planning meeting at one point and we were looking at, what are our values? And Linda did such a great job of saying, don't make aspirational ones, make ones that truly define who you guys are at this point. And so looking back, we were able to do that and really define and capture who we were as an organization because we had done some work and really kind of identified who we were. And I was really resistant to it. You can ask anybody on my team.
No
I
way.
Yes, I took the disc and I got back my results from that, and I thought, "That is not me, and I'm done taking these tests." And then I did the predictive index, and, maybe that's why I love the Enneagram. It finally gave me results I agreed with. I was good with it at that point. Then the predictive index, and then I got the Enneagram, and I explained my results, and I remember standing around my team and I was saying, "This isn't right. That's not who I am." And they all were like, "It is. It is who you are." And I was like, "Okay, well, moving on.
Well,
Acceptance, moving on." But yeah.
wow, that's so powerful to your team for them to see you, like, humbly taking this feedback that actually this is how you are, and as a leader, like, being able to turn the mirror on ourselves first. I mean, what
Yeah.
better way to model to especially, like, generally a younger workforce in our field, the importance of humility and feedback, right?
No, I'm grateful to have a team that tells me when I'm just not hitting the mark. And they do, thankfully. They really do. And I'm grateful for it.
So let's start at some basics. Can you describe the different Enneagram types?
Oh, yes, I can. This is my favorite pop quiz because I know all the answers. So the different types you want me to describe? Okay, so there's the 1, and that's the perfectionist. The 2, I should also say a disclaimer, there's different names depending on what resources you
Mm.
dive into. So this is not the official thing. So the 1, the perfectionist, 2, the nurturer, 3, the achiever, 4, the individualist, 5, the analyst or the investigator, 6, the loyalist, 7, the enthusiast, 8, the challenger, and 9, the peacemaker. I did it.
Well, well done. You did just answer it like it was a pop quiz. I'm like super impressed. And just give us some context around, I mean, when taking this, there's free online assessments, and I think the one I took was like 15 minutes long. But, how does the Enneagram look at the world of personality and behaviors and characterize people?
Yeah, so the Enneagram, it's just a personality typing tool. And so basically what it does is it categorizes different personality types in these 9 Enneagrams. And within that, you have a main Enneagram. So like you mentioned, you get on, I think the one you did was Cloverleaf, which I think is one of my favorite ones. And you take a series of tests and it pops out with your main Enneagram type. And then through that, you also have wings, which are on either side of your main type. And so, you have maybe you're a 5 and you have a wing 6 or you have a wing 4. So there's still a lot of like individualization within the Enneagram. It doesn't separate the world in 9 categories and that's it. There's lots of variations within it. And then the Enneagram, what's really cool about it is it's not so much about what you do within the environment. So the behaviors that you carry out in your day-to-day life, but it's about your motivation. Deep down, knowing that you maybe, if you're an individualist, strive to be really unique from other people, but maybe you're really aware of that and your behavior looks a little bit different than what your core motivation is. So again, it's not about what you do, it's about what you want to do.
Hmm. I think that's something that's really interesting and important because I used to hate actually, I've always loved sort of personality tests, right? The Myers-Briggs and all the others. And at the same time, I hated them because it just felt like all they really did was categorize you, right? They
Mhm.
just put you in a box and then it's like, eh. Whereas, as I've learned over the course of my career to lean into some of these different tools, that true power is what you described. It's your underlying motivation, like your modus operandi, like why do you do the things you do? And that's important certainly for self-awareness, but even more so for how you get along with others and how others understand, therefore, your motivation, which leads to better communication and working together. Is that how you tend to look at using it? How do you use it at the Blossom Center?
Yeah, I think that's definitely how I look at it. At Blossom, I mean, I think the first thing was definitely knowing myself and really kind of understanding myself a little bit differently. I took the test and I found out what I was and I went down that path and then I had my team do it. And I like to, maybe I'm in delusion, but I think we're all obsessed as a whole, but maybe not. Maybe they just put up with me. And that's just kind of filtered down. We had a recent team event. We were celebrating our 11th year and we had one of our leaders. She wasn't able to attend and she asked if we could take over her team building activity for our event. And I told her yes, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. And I had everybody take the Enneagram with during that time. And so it's kind of filtered down that way through the teams, like nothing super intentional. We definitely make sure our leaders have it and that we know it. And it's just kind of common knowledge. We recently rolled out it was initially starting out as a leadership and management training course, but as we were developing it, I was not feeling really great about it and just really honed in and leaned into the leadership aspect
Mm,
of leadership and management. If you put them together, it seems so unfair because they're two super huge concepts. And so, really, for us, what we needed at that point was really investing and focusing on leadership. And so, we've embedded it along with the DISC within our leadership training and mentorship because, we want to make sure that anybody that's coming within our organization, they number one know themselves and then also are interacting with the people that they're mentoring and supporting in a way that is individualized to each person that we have on our team and getting away from the traditional I'm your boss because I said so,
mm.
really looking at somebody that they're supporting and mentoring and looking at them with a different lens and understanding their strengths, their weaknesses, their motivations, and things that are not motivating to them. I think that's the beginning point for us, and who knows where we take it?
As you're describing this, this is part of the best practice of appropriately using a tool like the Enneagram, which is it's not a one and done, or you just take it when you join the organization or just as part of leadership, but where these tools have powers where you're consistently using them over time. And it almost becomes a common language, I guess, and that gets built into your DNA. Like, this is the Blossom Center way. What's an example of like in the day to day where someone might reference an Enneagram? Is it to resolve conflict? Is it part of supervisory meetings? Is it funny to be like, ah, ha, ha, I'm number two, the nurturer? That's why I just said that.
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind was the not so serious part, which are the jokes. I work really closely with a somebody on our leadership team. And we constantly, this morning, we were at a meeting and we were talking about how I'm a one and she's a seven. We definitely joke about it a ton. That team event that I referenced, I had some of our RBTs, they had taken the test. And as an entire team, we were giggling about it because right after that, it was like, move, I don't know, Sally's car. And we all walked out, and Sally's bright blue car was in the middle of the parking lot and I think she had tested as a 7 wing 8. It was just so funny because we were like, that's such a 7 wing 8 thing to do. Or maybe she was an 8. I can't remember. So we were just all kind of giggling about that. And it was really funny because all the cars in the parking lot were in a completely different place and we had cleared it out for the activities we were doing. So it was just stuck there in the middle and it was really hilarious. But then I had a team member who was supporting and coaching their team member and really kind of coming up against a wall, up against a wall, up against a wall. And really at one point sitting down and being like, these are your strengths according to the Enneagram. Like you believe in that. Yes, no, whatever it may be. And then their counterpart and really identifying how to navigate that. And so, even to this day, that team member comes and says, thank goodness we did that because now I know the things to say. I know how to approach. I know how to work through those situations a little bit more smooth and not getting into that loop where they're not understanding each other, not being able to collaborate.
I mean, humor is a great deflector and just like an opener, right, to insights and improved dialogue. It's really funny, we've actually so at Ascend, we've used the predictive index for a couple of years, and we're transitioning to the Enneagram. At Element, we use the DISC. And I'll never forget one of our mentors at Element about a year ago made a comment as we were debriefing our results, me and my couple co-founders. So this idea came up that, hey, let Jonathan be Jonathan. Or let Will be Will. Let Ryan be Ryan. But it was that same idea of certain situations come up, and whereas in the past, maybe who knows if it would have been tense or not, but it was just a way of explaining whom we were, and like that was okay and something to be cherished and celebrated.
Yeah. Yeah. It just gave me the ability to put words to who I was, like put a little bit more meaning to the reason why I did things. And I feel like now instead of being like, well, you guys know how I am, I can express it a little bit more clearly. I know now that I really value order and organization and I couldn't have said that truly a couple years ago and I couldn't have communicated that to my team and then they wouldn't know that and yada yada yada. So I think it definitely gives a starting point to have some really honest, direct, vulnerable conversations that ultimately you can respect everybody a little bit more, accept everybody a little bit more. And I mean, when you're talking about working on a team, work together so much more efficiently, effectively, and also, I will say, have more fun.
100%. Well, Google's Project Aristotle talked about the importance, like the highest performing teams. There's a lot of great results that came out of that research and study, but the kernel was have psychological safety in teams. And it feels like a critical part of psychological safety is understanding one another, how to communicate with one another in ways that are inclusive and promote everyone's voice counting and all of that. And so the Enneagram or any of these tools, I think it's less important which specific one is used and more that it's consistently used and you use it in a genuine way to understand others. So Hallie, what is your Enneagram type and describe sort of what that means and what have you learned about yourself using it?
Oh my gosh, so many. So I've kind of hinted at it, but I'm a one, loud and proud, a number one.
And one is perfectionist, right?
Yeah. Yes. So perfectionist, I think, has a negative connotation. Some people say the reformer. I like that, depending, what context I'm using it in. But yeah, I love organization. I think the biggest thing for me is I am really concerned with justice, right and wrong. And looking back, I remember my mom getting frustrated with me in moments and, me getting so hung up on that's not fair. And she would tell me life isn't fair. And for me, that was soul crushing because I am consumed with right and wrong. So, yeah, organization. And then with that being really detail oriented. So, I will walk in a room and I feel like I can pick up on everything that is going wrong in a room. I mean, those are maybe the more positive traits. I think the other things is I'm pretty pessimistic. I have to be really aware of that because I can see all of the things in a room, the chipped paint, maybe the rug coming up, or that's just like where my brain goes to. So tend to be a little bit more pessimistic. I get really tied up on details. If it's not perfect, I have a really hard time with that. Really inflexible. Though I think what I've learned through Enneagram is just being super aware of that and knowing that it's something that I have a hard time with and not to, I don't know if since that's my automatic place that I go, I don't know that it'll all ever be something that's easy for me, but just to take a step and give myself a little bit of perspective. I was training one of our BCBAs and I was telling her this example of a one. I was sitting in my office and I have huge, beautiful windows in my office, and there's a parking lot in front. And there was a car reversing, and it was reversing, and I just like glanced at it. And the first thing that I thought was, their license plate cover is broken. And then my second thing that I thought was, that's such a beautifully colored car. It was like a dusty sand. I really loved it. But my first thought was, their license plate cover is broken. And then I was just like, I need to chill out, you know? So just kind of, yeah.
Wow, what do you think is like the function of that, of this idea of attention to detail and noticing maybe something that's wrong?
I don't know. What is the function of it? Well, I would say the function of it is I'm an Enneagram 1. I don't I don't know. I think because with the Enneagram 1 and also the predictive index, just being really results focused. And so
Mm.
maybe when there's a small detail that's out of line or something like that, maybe the results are threatened. And
Mm.
so, maybe that has to do with it, but then that'll be my only answer because I can't come up with another hypothesis. But
No, that's interesting. I like that. Well, the other interesting thing, Hallie, is that it seems to generalize across settings. So, as an example, in the podcast, we have a team of 5, and you are the COO. Like, and you keep the trades running on time. You keep us organized. You shoulder all kinds of work to make sure that, because there's a million and one things, right, that go into making sure a podcast is successful. Um, and like you've just so beautifully moved into that role. Does it also generalize to your personal life too?
yeah, it does. I am very fortunate to have married a person who also values those things. So I'm not in a situation where I am the polar opposite of somebody. We strive on, or we really function well off of efficiency. And I think we align really well in that. We have some individual traits, we're not the same by any means. I think we just kind of that is something that we value, and so we don't hit too many roadblocks with that. But yeah, I feel like I'm pretty much always the planner and the details and getting everybody together at the same time and kind of like herding of everything. And then with my kids as well. I mean, I'm always sending my husband calendar events of things that we have and just kind of keeping us on track that way. I would say yes, but I don't think it's an opposite situation. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
That's that's a good point around like, yeah, I mean, there's the old adage, opposites attract, and I don't know if that's true or I mean, we you see it anecdotally a lot. But I don't know if that's as true as any 2 Enneagram types can function successfully, whether as spouses or business partners. The more important question is, how open and communicative are you around who you are and whom they are, and
Yeah,
therefore how you best have dialogue, how you resolve
right.
conflict, how you want to raise your kids, or how you want to achieve certain goals in a business, right? It seems like that's the important part.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, my husband at this point, he knows all the things about the Enneagram, but yeah, just I think whether it's personal or professional, just having these open conversations and this open dialogue surrounding, you know, who you are and what you do and you don't bring to the table. And as much as it pains me to say, I think now I like to think of everything, or I challenge myself to think of everything as an interaction, not so much a right or wrong, but what are they bringing and what is the other person bringing and how that comes together versus they're approaching it in a wrong way. They're approaching it in a correct way, which is a challenge sometimes for me, but I think I like to think of it that way. And the Enneagram makes that a little bit easier.
Hmm. I think that's a critical pinpoint. And that is like in this day and age, it's really easy just to put labels on people,
Yeah,
right? Or just to think of ourselves as I'm right, that person's wrong, whether it's in social media or politics or anything else. And that just feels like the opposite way that as human beings we best interact, and which is to understand that there's not just black or white out there. There's a whole host of things that make us who we are and that motivate us. and that we should honor in our interactions with others instead of just throwing a label on someone and saying, all right, that means I can be their friend or I can't be.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. Yeah. With Enneagram, it's not to say that at all. It's not to say that. I think I see on the internet, people are like, who should I marry if I'm an Enneagram one? And you're not going to find any of that. Or like, who should be my best friend if I'm an Enneagram one? But it's not so much about that. There's not a better link up of people than other um, links of people. It's just more so about knowing how to best interact and where your shortcomings are too.
Hmm. Well, all right. So, Hallie, you inspired me to
Yes.
finally do my own Enneagram and take the self test a little bit ago. And we have not, listeners, discussed this ahead of time. So, before I share my type, Hallie, do you have a guess of what type I am and why you made that guess?
Yeah. Okay. So I think that you are, if I had to guess, a 7 wing 8.
And just say the labels on each of those.
Okay. So a 7 is the enthusiast or adventurer. And then a wing 8 is a challenger.
Hmm.
Mm.
Should we do the drum roll?
Yeah.
And full disclosure, I did not, and I probably looked at it the wrong way. I did not see my wings, so I don't know that. But um, the drum roll, I am indeed a 7 enthusiast.
Really?
That is impressive, Hallie. I mean, granted, we've known each other for what, year and a half, 2, almost 2 years now. So, but yes. All right. So, how did you come to that conclusion? Like, what are the kinds of things that you look out for more generally as you're interacting with others, and then specific to me?
Yeah. Hold, I just feel like I won something.
You won all of the things, Hallie. You won all of the things just now.
I used to type everybody a lot, but then I read this thing like, don't type people and tell them what they are because then they'll have a skewed
Hmm.
opinion on it. But you took it, so I did engage, and I do feel so happy that I was correct. But oh my gosh, I think you are so an adventure and enthusiast. They are always down for a good time. They love making relationships with people, like really investing in relationships, getting to know people, really valuing relationships above everything else. They are visionaries. I think I like check all of your boxes. And an example of that is recently we were at, I mean, there's so many examples when it comes to you, Jonathan Mueller, but when we were at the CASP conference in May, was it May? Yeah.
May, yeah,
May.
Portland.
Yeah, we're in Portland and we went to dinner together with some strangers. There were some strangers in the mix. And we sit down and we weren't sat down for more than 3 minutes. And we were like, okay, so what do we talk about? And you were like, let's do how many questions is it to love?
36.
You're like, you're like, "Does anybody wanna fall in love tonight? Let's do 36 questions to fall in love." And they were these questions. It was like the first 3 are, "What's your favorite color? What's your favorite animal?" And then they just get more intense, more intense, more intense. And I want the record to state that by the time everybody left that table, we were in love. Everyone was in love. And I think that's a great example of a 7. You wanna know people, I think, on a really deep level, have a reciprocal relationship, and I think you're always down for a good time. Yeah, I think you're the epitome of a 7, actually.
Well, thank you for that. It's always when someone like labels you and you feel like, to your point from earlier, and you feel like it's a correct label, that there's nothing more reinforcing than, because it's like that's you, that's or me living my best life.
Mhm.
And it's so true about that dinner. I mean, there were at least what, 8 or 9 people at that table. And there's actually research around this, and there's a link I'll drop in the show notes around the 36 questions that lead to love. And it's this progressive engagement, or this progressive like disclosure of, more interesting things about you. The next person discloses a little bit more. And that's all part of building deep relationships. I remember reading the enthusiast type. It talks about things like wanting to maintain freedom and happiness. Yes, so true. Like avoid missing out on worthwhile experiences. Yes, I want to have all the experiences. Stay like keeping excited and occupied. And something that's really important here that I don't think I would have tacked it is avoiding and discharging pain. But it's true. My ninth layer of Dante's hell is when people don't get along or where
Mhm.
there is true conflict that's not being resolved.
That was gonna be my question because I think that with sevens, that's something I've heard a lot, the avoidance of pain or really, like, having to go into those more intense emotions. I have a friend of mine, she's a 7, and she sent me it was a meme, and it was, "I've had a really terrible day, but let's go get ice cream." And it was
Yes, yes, that's
Enneagram
exactly what
7.
yeah. And that's something I've had to combat over my career and personal life is, like, sometimes you just have to like, you have to sit with discomfort in order to come to a better
Mm,
outcome as opposed to just, "I see where your friend was coming. Yeah, like, hard day
mm.
let's go get ice cream. Let's go have coffee. Let's go have a beer, and let's go do something different." Tell me more about the Challenger because I need to go back now and look at my wing, but, the 8 wing style.
So a challenger is a really great leader. They're really passionate. They can make decisions really quickly. They're really confident in the way that they hold certain opinions and things like that. Whenever I think challenger, it's like passion and protectiveness too. They have a loyalty to their people and, just at all costs defending and protecting their loved ones, and I think where challenger came for me is I just through our interactions, I feel like you speak up and you assert yourself in that way, and you're really confident, and I feel like you know where you align in certain things, but you could very well maybe a loyalist too, which would be a 6, wing 7, but I don't know. I Those are the reasons. I don't know, does that resonate, like the 8 qualities to you?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I am, like, deeply passionate and never ever afraid to share my passion and conviction, which, I like to think, "Hey, I'm passionate about things that are important and meaningful in the world, like getting kiddos with autism services or helping out other ABA providers or democratizing access to knowledge." But I can also see where as a challenger, that would be really hard if there's, like, nefarious means. So that's something I'll have to piece together. But yes, being super passionate about and advocating for my teams
Mhm.
or my friends or family. No, what actually so in a personal let me share this. In my personal life, Hallie, and I've got 3 kids, 2 in elementary school, 1 in middle school. But one of the things I hate most is just putting a number on a kid.
Mhm.
It's like putting a label, right? And, "Oh, you got in the MAP test, you are this score." Or you need these supports or whatever it is. And yes, I love data and I understand that in public education we need data, but to reduce a kid to a number, like I so every time like a test comes home, one of these standardized tests, and it's like, oh great, let's celebrate. I got this number, or oh, it was hard, we got that number. It's like, you're not a number to me. I get like so worked up about this that it tends to then
Mhm.
come out. I'm like, no, like this is what you are to me, son, Jackson, or like Clara or Jillian, and I'm gonna love you no matter what number you are. But it's almost like I go over the brink when it comes to something that I don't feel is right.
Sounds very challenger-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was interesting about taking the test, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but, certain questions are just easier to answer, like, I don't know, you're at a party and do you wanna, like, be the life of the party, or do you wanna be someone who observes the party? Okay, that's easy, like, I wanna be the life of the party. But then there are other questions where we would ask 2, I don't know if, like, dissonant or, like, incongruent thing, neither of which I really felt like I was. Like, do you crave instead of asking, like, "Do you crave connection?" Which, yes, that's what I crave. But it's like, "Do you crave order or do you crave stability?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't give a shit about I don't want either of those," right? But there are a lot of questions that actually really made me think, is that an intention of the test or what is that meant to do?
I don't know, to be honest, it's been the test is just the first stepping stone if you're going on an Enneagram journey. You take the test and you don't even stop there, you don't take the 7 or me agreeing that you're a 7 as you being a 7, it's taking that as a jumping off point and diving into the resources of, is that something that truly aligns with my motivations and who I am? And then making your own judgment. And so the same thing with your wing, I wouldn't go back to your results or anything. I would look at the different wings and see which one you resonate more with. And to be honest with the test, I don't even entirely remember. All I definitely did get a 1 on my test, but I think I have come and accepted it more through diving into it more and really understanding it. So I don't even know. I'm sure it is intentional. I have no idea.
Remind me, what is your wing? If you're a 1, the perfectionist slash reformer,
Um, 2, which is a nurturer.
nurturer. Tell me
Mhm.
more about what it means to be a nurturer.
So a nurture is, and again, I do just have a wing of this, but just being really concerned about other people and other people's feelings and their needs and taking care of people around them. And I will say just an important note on the Enneagram. If you take the Enneagram, and a lot of times women will mistype as an Enneagram too, just because of social norms and expectations. And so just again, I was talking to my sister about it, and I think she had gotten a 2 initially, and I told her, like, retake it just to be sure. And she does have, I'm not discounting that, just being aware of that because the nurture is very giving and just kind of taking care of whether it be kids or the people around them or, just really concerned about people, other people's feelings, perspectives, all of that.
That all sounds like really important, like the EQ, emotional intelligence quotient.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not to say if you're not a nurturer, you don't have the skills. It's just more so like where it doesn't mean that you're not doing those things. It's just more so like where are those core motivations? What's automatic for you?
Yeah. Well, so one of the things, and I've been, and I'm not a BCBA, right? I am not a clinician, and
I feel like
and
that should be your catchphrase. Jonathan, not a BCBA.
well, I always feel like I need to make that disclosure, right? So I'm not trying to come across as an expert in something that I'm clearly not, but that I have deep passion about. Coming back to the challenge or the passionate. But one of the things that I've so appreciated about our field and our science of behavior analysis, but is this idea of evidence based, right? And evidence
Mhm.
based practice. And so when it comes to these different tests, whether Enneagram, predictive index, DISC, et cetera, like how would you characterize, is there a quote unquote evidence base for them? And or like, are these norm versus criterion reference? Can you compare? How do you think about that being a scientist practitioner and using this kind of tool?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to get too over analytic with it specifically. I know there's tons of research and everything surrounding it, but I try not to go too deep down that path. I maybe should a little bit more, but I'm not quite there yet. Maybe I will get there. There's a lot available in terms of the Enneagram, and I don't know so much as the different interactions. I would assume it's all anecdotal in terms of like the different interactions and things like that. But I don't know. I think it's something that makes sense and is meaningful for me, and it hasn't failed me yet. So I'm good with it.
Hmm. I love that. W- For ABA providers who have not used any one of these assessment tools, what would you encourage as like one actionable next step they could try?
Yeah, I think the Enneagram really aligns really well with individualizing how we're interacting. I think it aligns with what we're doing, what we do with ABA from a client standpoint. We want to approach every client in a different way and individualize their treatment and everything like that. And so I think why I am so tied to it and motivated by it, it really allows me, that's maybe a little bit more natural as a BCBA to approach people that I'm interacting or supporting or
Mm,
mentoring and really individualize their treatment. And so maybe that equips me a little bit better. And I think just starting stepping stones is just looking into it, seeing if it's something that resonates with you, if it's something that equips you. I think as leaders, whether diving into the Enneagram or the predictive index or the DISC, really knowing number one, who you are, and then knowing who your team is. And I think really having open and honest conversation. So maybe just to summarize it, taking the Enneagram, taking some sort of personality test and starting those conversations. And then maybe embedding it in a leadership training, then having the rest of the team, like having something more structured. But I think the beginning steps could be really easy and applicable.
well, and I love that the first place you went on that was look at yourself as a leader. Don't try to like send it out and say, all right, everyone take this and then like report back. And there's so many reasons that's powerful as a leader to start with yourself and understand who you are. But think about the power of this. Going to your team after having taken it and maybe, a decision you made, or there's a hard day you had or something. And you say, hey, look, I was reflecting on my behavior the other day and I decided I want to learn a little bit more about my motivations and who I am. And let me just give you a quick explanation of the how and the why that happened, not justifying it, but just saying, this is what I learned about myself. And thank you for having grace with me. Full stop. Gosh, that's powerful to model for your teams.
It is, and I think it again, I've used the word equipped, but I do feel so equipped to really be vulnerable, to have really humble conversations with the people that I'm working with. The other day, we were in a leadership meeting and we were having conversations, and I was having this internal desire to overstep a little, to get a little too involved. And had that been the past, I would have just done it, unfortunately. I would have just done whatever I felt innately that I needed to do in that moment. But the Enneagram and knowing where thrive and where I don't, I was able to come up and be like, hey guys, because I want to control everything and we know this about me, I'm feeling a need to get involved and over involved. So, what are we going to do about that? And it was a really great moment, I felt like, for myself, but then also for my team to hold me accountable and come up with a solution that benefited the team a little bit better than me just maybe steamrolling, which is not good.
That's so you tacted, "Hey, I'm feeling a need to get more deeply involved, and help me think about that, and let's process it." That is This is like the stuff of genius that I wanna call out for all our listeners that makes for the best leaders. I mean, this is the Brené Brown kinda work that,
Don't get me started on Brené Brown, okay? It'll be a whole other episode. But yes, I love her. And yes, I had a lot come to me with Dare to Lead and diving into that. And I think that these combined have been really great stepping stones for me. And I'm not anywhere where ultimately I hope to be, but I think it's helped me start that progress and work on myself because I for sure needed it as a leader.
mm. Okay, so you are right. We should dedicate an entire separate episode of Brene Brown because I'm like
Yes.
huge fanboy. And I have huge jealousy of you because you're like not that far from her, right? She's at UT Austin.
Yeah, I think she lives in Houston.
Oh no, I think you're right. She's in
Yeah.
Houston, but either way, you are much closer to her than I am in Colorado. So
Yeah.
there is that. But how about this? Where were you when you first read Dare to Lead?
Oh my gosh. So I listened to it and I was at a really pivotal point. I was struggling really hard with a team member and I didn't know what to do. And it starts from the top. So I knew I had some accountability in a situation that we had. And it just felt like things were imploding and impossible and heavy. And I didn't know what to do, and I remembered people just in passing mentioning Dare to Lead or Brené and all of that, and I was like, "You know what? Nothing else to lose." And so I just started listening to it, and I remember just being smacked in the face and knowing exactly not even we, where I was coming short and where my accountability, I was so confused because I was like, "What am I doing on a day-to-day basis? I don't understand what I'm putting in, what I'm taking out," and it just really helped me lead a lot better than I was in that moment and through that situation because I was so lost.
Wow.
So,
So when I first read it, I listened to it as well. Same thing. And it was a few years ago. And I'm a volunteer ski coach. I work with kids, including my own kids, on teams. And so we had some kind of early season training. It was like a December. And I listened to it over the course of 4 hours of driving up early in the morning and then driving back that day. And I was so riveted, especially with this idea of, she uses that Teddy Roosevelt quote that's basically, if you haven't experienced victory nor defeat, you're one of those soulless people. It's like, get in the arena, get in the arena. But she has such powerful frameworks for how to think about resolving conflict, how to think about, hey, let's rumble, right? Just calling it out. Hey, we're going to have a harder conversation. Let's label it that. And boom, now let's have that conversation. It's really powerful. And of the many things, Hallie, that I so admire about you, you actively not only lean into your own learning and self-awareness and whom you are and where you fit in, but you're actively like cultivating your mentors. And and I think those are the hallmarks of someone who's had an 11-year career with an organization and has gone from being a behavior therapist to BCBA to, getting promoted all the way up to the C-suite. How do you actively cultivate your mentors?
Well, first, thank you for complimenting me. That is very nice. I think some of them I think like most people gotten really lucky. You just wind up with these people. One of my other sisters says that there's no such thing as coincidences. And then she says, now that's scary, huh? And I just can't go that deep. Um, but yeah, I think by accident or by coincidence, they were just there. And then I think, from I would say the past couple years, maybe 3 years, the ones that I have accumulated and the ones that allow me to like latch onto them till, they've had enough. I hope nobody does. But I think it's again knowing myself and knowing where I fall short and really aligning with people who are those who have those strengths. I think like just an example with you, a 7 is really so much the opposite of a 1, but we have so much fun together, and I think we both bring different things and in terms of the Enneagram, but then I know nothing about finance. I have tried to learn a lot, and I've tried to really hone in on that skill, and I'm responsible for the operations of a whole company, and so I really need people who do have that as a strength and, maybe lean into me for more of my clinical expertise. I think it's just knowing about what I bring and I don't bring and seeing where people can align with me, and bring the strength in, if that makes
Mm,
sense.
it does. It's this whole idea. A mentor once told me, um, if you feel like you're the smartest person in the room, change rooms. And that's something that doesn't just happen in school or in grad school or in our first job. That should be something that happens until the day we die. And so anyway, I just like I honor you, and I think it's really cool how you've actively cultivated mentors. And one of your OG mentors, as I understand it, was your grandma, Dema Stout, who
Mhm.
actually like inspired you to get into ABA. Like, tell me that
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. So Dima Stout, she's been in the field and impacting families and individuals with autism, ADHD, just kind of a whole gamut. I mean, she's been in the field for so long. And I think through her, and even more recently, she works with um, older adults and typically like college age, kind of coaching them through that journey and being a source of support. I told her recently, like, this is so impressive. And she's been doing it for so long. She's probably like, Hallie, I've been doing this your entire life and you're finally noticing. But, I told her it's so cool because I specialize in early intervention. And so to then have the perspective of she's coaching and supporting kiddos through college and adulthood, that's just really cool for me. And she does it in such an interesting way, and she just has like she's seen the field evolve and she's seen it what it's brought, what it hasn't, where the strengths are, where the shortcomings are. And I was ultimately an 18-year-old. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and one day she just said, hey, I have this connection, go talk to them. And I did. Thank goodness I did. Thank goodness I listened to my grandma's advice. And yeah, that I mean, I don't know. I always tell people and then they're like, "Your grandma?" And I'm like, "Yeah, my grandma." It's also on TikTok. She's real cool like that.
Stop it.
Yeah, mhm.
Oh, she's hipster and an
Yep,
OG.
yep, she's up with the
Ah,
time.
wow. That's a whole conversation for a separate day. Well, that's super cool that she inspired you. Well, let's pivot back to the podcast and give a window, a portal for listeners into what's it like behind the scenes at the podcast.
Behind the scenes at the podcast, I feel like A interview that we did recently just kind of talked about the diversity that we have as hosts. And I just love the conversations that we have because we all come from such different backgrounds and we just bring different types of expertise. I think that's it on a virtual end. And we recently had a really great episode with ABR, which was really great. And could have stayed on that forever. In the preparation meetings that we had ahead of that, we just were going in so many different places. And I remember just sitting back and listening to you and Nitesh and Na and just listening to you guys. I didn't even have anything to add, but where you guys were going and taking it and talking about the field and pushing it forward, I feel so lucky to have you guys give me that perspective and come out of it a little bit. You know what I mean? Like just really connect as providers and talk about where we want it to go, the issues, the solutions. That's it in person or virtually when we're meeting, but in person, we're fun. We're a fun group, right?
Yeah, I think there's like a high degree of psychological safety amidst a very, diverse, set of personalities and people with different motivations and different Enneagrams. And that's super cool. You reference ABR, Dr. Aaron Blocker Rubin, whom we interviewed, and that dropped back in September. Do you have a favorite interview that's been done?
I don't wanna say favorite. So, I don't know. I really, really loved his episode because I feel like that was the one that was most comfortable for me because he was so honest, he was so
Mhm.
vulnerable. I loved the discussion that he and Nitesh got into it, like, into not into it, but, just
Mhm.
kinda back and forth and talking about different ABA organizations and the impact on the field. And I really know that I enjoyed this one because I listened to it like 3 times, and every time I was just through the editing process, I was just so into it again, and I feel like every time I came back to it, I had a different takeaway. So, I don't know, I guess I would have to say that one, but I don't know if it's because we just did it and I really liked it. But that one was really great. I really do have to say.
That one was awesome. Well, it's another thing I appreciate about you, Hallie, is you are deeply curious and you want to know about other people and what motivates them and what makes them tick, but also just what their life experience is. And there's a way you have of honoring those
Mhm.
around you that I just find super cool.
Well, thanks. Thanks so much. Thanks for being on this path with me because you pushed me and I like it.
Right on the sevens and the ones.
Yep.
Right. Hallie, what's one thing EBA owners should start doing and one thing to stop doing?
Okay, so start doing, I think, looking outside. Looking outside in different fields and being, I don't know, maybe like being curious and being a little bit more open. I think back to, I think it was an email thread through CASP, and somebody asked some question of what is one thing that somebody should do to build their expertise? And I think Laura Unum, CEO of CASP, said, work in a different field first. And it's like, touche. And I say that very humbly because I mean, I've worked at the same company for 11 years. So, I've had lots of different experiences within Blossom, but you know, like Nitesh, he has so much experience outside of ABA and he brings this unique perspective in, and I think that that is what is changing our field and really pushing us because we cannot do it all. As a BCBA who has been clinical for the majority of my professional career, I can just be really confident in that. It's going to take so many different people with different levels of expertise. And I don't know, I just think that they bring something unique to the field.
Ah, well said. How about one thing to stop doing?
Just like not being satisfied in whatever capacity that you're working in within an ABA organization and just across the board, like never being satisfied. Just stop being satisfied. Is that an
Mm,
answer?
of
Yeah.
course it is. You know what's cool about that answer, Hallie, is that it is, as and again, I'm not a BCBA and a practitioner, but as a deliverer of ABA services to kiddos with autism, we're never satisfied. It's like, okay, learn that skill. Yes, awesome, celebrate, and let's learn the next skill, or let's work on the next. It's like we're always wanting more for our kiddos, right? And I think it should be the same way for an organization. We should always be wanting more for our organization, more for our teams,
Yeah.
more for what their experience is. So I love that idea. Don't rest on laurels.
Yeah.
Don't just be satisfied.
Yeah.
Where can people find you online, Hallie?
I'm on LinkedIn. That's the most, I think, direct point of contact.
I will put a link in the show notes to your LinkedIn profile and to the Blossom Center and to the Enneagram, the Cloverleaf free test that I did. Well, cool. Hey, friend, are you ready for the hot take questions?
I am ready. Always.
And this feels very meta because most of the time, many times, you're the one asking guests on the podcast
Yes, that's
these
so true.
questions. So, touche, friend, turn back around at you. Here we go. You're on your deathbed. What's the one thing you want to be remembered for?
I just want to be remembered as a good person, a good human, and hopefully that I raised some good humans too.
What's your most important self-care practice?
Oh my gosh, I love this question so much. And people who know me well know that I love some good self-care. So I could list them individually, but I mean, I am dedicated to working out. I have a workout every morning that sets my day up for success for me. But I think more than that is I've really gotten away from work life balance and that expectation recently. And I have more leaned into work life integration
Mm,
and really having more realistic expectations for myself and not getting stressed when I'm having to be flexible, which, is a growth area for me. And so, yeah, just work life integration instead of setting these really stringent and hard lines on when my work should be and when my personal life should be. I have really meshed them and intertwined them. And it's not to say I'm sitting and playing with my kids and on my computer, but it's more so really being able to respond to my organization when I need to and come off of it when I don't need to be completely, you know, active.
mm,
And something that I want for my team as well. I mean, we have just, started these conversations and I want to be protecting their time and their health. It's the very beginning of the journey for me, but it has been a relief. And so I hope my team and hopefully other teams can be on that path too. And it works for me, maybe not for everyone in every position, but I don't know.
I love that. Yeah, work-life integration. I mean, I use a similar term, work-life fit, right? We have to figure out the way that our work and our personal life fit and tie to one another.
Yeah.
What's your favorite song?
Um Edelweiss from The Sound of Music.
Ah,
Yeah.
wonderful
Mhm.
musical,
Yeah, I loved it.
wonderful song.
Well, I still love it.
Ah. If you could give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, this is such a good question because, I mean, the list goes on, but I think I would say don't worry, you know? Just don't worry. Don't worry about it.
Uh,
Even though, I mean, I would probably still worry, but that's what I'd say.
and you can only wear one kind of footwear for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I've thought about this in my life before this podcast. I really have because I want to be prepared for any circumstance, and it's boots. You could run away from a zombie if you needed to. You could be fashionable if you needed to. And you could be protected from things if you needed to be.
And you mean cowboy boots or like work
No, not cowboy boots, not steel toe boots, but just, I don't know how to describe them. Like, not booties.
working boots?
I guess we can say working boots. I wish I had a picture for you. I'll show you later.
Okay, I'll check out that. But I love, by the way, that you mentioned, like, that you could run away from zombies much in my life. I don't know that I'd call myself a prepper at the end times, but I think, what would what would I do? What would my family do in the event of a zombie apocalypse? And do I have enough Coors Light in the basement? Do I have a bathtub filled up with water? Do I have XYZ? And zombie movies happen to be my favorite movies, so you just struck a chord. Thank you, Natalie.
Listen, I am in Texas and we had a snowpocalypse a couple years ago, so you can't ever be too prepared. I got a little taste of it. Tiny, tiny taste. And you just keep on that path because I'm not convinced it won't happen.
Oh, man. On that note, dude, thank you so much, friend, for coming on. I love how much you shared of your wisdom and experience, and I'm giving you big hugs.
Of course. Thank you. Right back at you. Thank you for having me also.
Thanks for listening to Building Better Businesses in ABA podcast. Stay tuned for our next exciting episode. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. We value your feedback. Don't forget to follow us on social media at elementrcm.ai.